Hello, everyone. You are listening to the Worldview from an Outcast podcast, and today we have a special guest, David Beckemeyer. Hello, David.
Hi, Summer. How's it going?
I'm all right. This person is the host of the Outrage Overload podcast. He, as far as I know, let me know if I get it right, is an expert on depolarization in the midst of outrage in media. And maybe today we will learn from him how to navigate with the message we're getting, from the news to be able to have more or less of a divide with our neighbors and, what to believe basically. So am I correct in that?
Yeah, that sounds good. We'll try to cover all that.
So, what type of what type of podcasts are you doing with your Outrage Overload podcast? Are you having guests? And you named it that, so that must be your area or field of expertise. Can you share some of your knowledge with us today?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So I was caught up in kind of the outrage spiral that we all suffer from, and that got me thinking about, what's going on here, and maybe we can do something about this. So that's kind of where it got me. That's kind of where the title comes from. This idea that we're kind of inundated with stuff trying to make us mad, and what's
Yes,
going on
I
with that.
agree.
And so then, and so maybe there's some people looking into that. I'm kind of a science nerd, and so that's what got me thinking, okay, well, a podcast could be a good forum for maybe going and talking to some scientists that are looking into these problems. And also I've discovered
Okay.
there's a whole world of kind of what's kind of referred to as kind of the bridge building industry, sort of
Mm-hmm.
the bridge building movement of people that are kind of trying to look into these divides and how to do practical things with it. And then another lane we sort of spend time in is the whole disinformation, misinformation, and media literacy and information literacy. So those are some of the main things we look at. And then also a little bit, because of my tech background, we also kind of overlap that with tech, since tech is a big part of this, with social media and now AI and other aspects of tech kind of playing a role in this.
Right. So now, so are is what is outstanding, I'll say it, is the Fox News, the CNN, and then they have differing viewpoints, you would say. And then where does social media fit in, would you say?
Yeah, and social media is a whole, like a lot of people blame all of our problems kind of on social media, and I think it certainly has a role, but that's an oversimplified view of things. But social media definitely has been a big factor in kind of contributing to this toxic environment that we're in. In social media, a big piece of it is it's all based on engagement, right? So it's like the stuff we click and stuff we comment on and stuff we like, it keeps feeding us that. So
Right.
many times we're clicking on the stuff that's the most kind of divisive and gets us angry, even to our own detriment, we still do it. And so we click on that stuff, then we get more of it, and we keep
Like
getting
the
a kind of,
algorithms. Is
yeah,
that what that is? Yeah.
yeah. So then we keep seeing more and more of this stuff that's showing us a world where everybody's, angry, and those people on the other side are the worst people ever, and that's why I should hate them, and that's why I'm better than them. I'm, morally superior, and we just keep getting
Right.
fed that.
Impressionable people we are.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we kind of want that validation that we made the right choice, like we picked the right team kind of thing, right?
Yeah. So I have a question for you. What's the reason, why do people watch the news? And then there's those that don't.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. A lot of us that are working in these kind of this kind of space in one way, from one way or another, we talk so much about good news sources and how do you find good news sources and what are the
Yeah.
news sources, but we kind of forget that like the vast majority of people don't consume news at all.
Yeah,
And so most
I
of
mean,
what they're
people
getting,
have been so turned off by it all that they just quit, watching it.
right? Yeah, and a lot of people, aren't actively seeking out news, but it still shows up in their social media feeds, and they still
Yeah.
hear about it from their friends, and it's kind of still filters into their lives, even if they're not actively participating, which is sometimes the worst because now you're just kind of getting the sort of network's picture of the world and you're not taking an active role in it. But yeah, I mean, and it can be frustrating because, like I said before, a lot of people blame everything on social media, but we've seen this in the traditional media as well, that once you start, all your revenue is based on clicks and views and attention, you start doing more and more outrageous things to, keep those viewers activated and engaged.
I
And then
see what you're saying, because that's what generates clicks, is the craziest stuff that you can make.
Right. Yeah,
I get it.
exactly.
Okay. So, where was I going? I was going to say, you can write your legislators, or you even can write, or lobby, anyone in the government. If you want to get involved, don't be afraid to reach out to your representatives, etc. If you have an opinion you want shared or acknowledged. And so in the news lately, I would ask you either to descriptively explain how one of the recent news stories has been has polarized us, or what is your idea of an ideal news story or article or piece from a television channel. And like, people, like, not everyone's the same, but I guess is this what you're saying? A majority of the people like sensory news because it gives them a feeling, and then the media feeds into that and gives them that for more revenue.
Yeah, I mean, these partisan, the more partisan networks have kind of emerged to feed into that, to feed into our partisan, kind of tribal nature. And so then we tune into those channels to be kind of validated that, our tribe is the good tribe and the other tribe is the bad tribe. And so we do like it because we keep getting that validation. I think so you see this, you can pick almost anything on a more extreme channel, like you said, a Fox News on one side and maybe an MSNBC, or what is it called, MS Now, on the other side. And, and they're not always just flat out sort of telling you lies or whatever, but they're making choices about what they show you and what they don't show you. And they're making choices about how they frame that story or that subject. And sometimes it's flat out lies. More often it's just kind of, like I say, leaving things out, or maybe just, kind of spinning it a certain way to get you more riled up, kind of just showing a little bit of it to get you more riled up about it. And maybe if you look deeper, you might find, it's not quite as bad as they're making it out to be.
Yeah, they do actually have false news, don't they? And you don't know what to believe. And so there you go.
Sometimes there's flat out false news. It's more often it's just kind of they leave some stuff out to only show you certain stories, right? And then that gives you a
blurb that shows up, and then you press on it, and then it turns out to be something totally different than you thought.
Yeah, and that happens a lot. And that's, again, comes back to that engagement thing, right? Because even the author that wrote the article many times in those cases didn't write the headline, right? Like the marketing department wrote the headline. So even sometimes the author of that story is upset about it because, they put stuff in the headline that's not even in the article, but, it's because that's what got the most engagement. They don't have
control over that, yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. So each person has their role and each person has their boundaries, but sometimes those boundaries are crossed or whatever, stuff like that. So I don't really know, but do you have like advice or steps that we can take to be able to navigate through the news outrage in the news, and how to just sort of depolarize and sort of treat each other as a friend instead of an enemy in this nation?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things we can do. Everybody kind of wants the magic, sort of the magic place I can go to get perfect news all the time. And that doesn't exactly exist. But there are tools that can help. Like there's a there's a free newsletter you can subscribe to called 1440 News, and it gives a daily summary of sort of some of the main news out there, and it tries to pick pretty high quality sources, right, that are fairly reasonable. It gives you a reasonable picture of what's going on out there.
Yeah.
So you can kind of catch up on today's news in like 15 minutes or 10 minutes or less, depending on how much time you want to go through that email. There's another place if you want to dive deeper. They have a free level. It's called Tangle News. They have a free level. They also have a paid version that just every once in a while they post things that are behind the paywall. But they post quite a few things that are on the free side, and you can get those. And it also comes in email, and it's published online as well. And what it does is it covers sort of one main topic a day. So it doesn't do the same kind of thing where it gives you all of the stuff of the day. It picks one topic and then kind of deep dives on that one topic. And they give you what they kind of put it as, here's what the right is saying, what the left is saying, sometimes what the center is saying, and then kind of their take on it. And the nice
Oh,
thing
that
about
sounds
that,
good. Yeah.
yeah, and the nice thing about that is they've done a good job to pick reasonable sources. These are the more thoughtful kind of pieces. They don't just pick the most outrageous people on the left and the most outrageous people on the right. They try to pick, some more thoughtful instances of that, and that can
So
help.
it's more neutral, maybe neutral and more true and real and trustworthy.
Right. Yeah, they do a pretty good job at that. Those are a couple ones. There's a website called Ground News, which will help you kind of identify the bias of who's covering what and how they're covering it and whether they lean left or right. That's a tool that's out there. So there are some others too, but those are some good places to start. That can help on the news media front. I think in terms of our personal lives, what we can do is focus a little more in our communities, rather than being so worried about what's kind of happening at the national level and what's going on in Washington. Get more involved in your neighborhood and with your neighbors, and
Yeah.
work on fixing potholes down the street, and work side by side with people that get to know them. And and you don't have to talk about politics. You might know that they voted differently than you or whatever, but get to know them
Yeah.
in some context outside of politics, and then maybe later you could sort of bring up politics, and maybe, but at that point you know them a little better. Like, oh yeah, they have kids
Yeah.
and they're a pretty reasonable person. They're not like that person that the TV keeps showing me. These people are terrible and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they say you think listening to the news that the world is a terrible place, but try, talk to your neighbor. Try talking to your neighbor and you'll see it. It's really like you can make a nice interaction with your friends and neighbors. And I just actually wrote a poem last night. It was like, don't listen to the news because the that's it's sort of exaggerated or something. I would say if you concentrate all only on that, which is they usually highlight the negative stuff. And the world is really supposed to be a nice place, for us. That's why I think we're here, and we're here to like love and share and be friendly and care for each other. And listening, concentrating, and being obsessed with, these news stories are like it's almost like too much, you know.
Right. Yeah, it can
But
be.
so yeah,
And you
yeah,
asked earlier about, something that's a little bit more positive. And I would say, one example that comes to mind now that I'm thinking about it is on Sundays, I think it's called CBS Sunday Morning. It's Jane Pauley is the main host. And I think they do a pretty good job to highlight, some reasonable or some, more uplifting stories. They'll also sometimes talk about stuff in the news, but often they have a few, interesting stories and uplifting stories. I think that's a pretty good version of maybe a better type of it's not technically news, I guess, but it's just some updates of what's going on out there, and often they have some uplifting stories in it. So I think I think they do a pretty good job. CBS Sunday Morning, I think it's called.
oh, CBS Sunday Morning. Okay, so again, I've written down what you told us were good news sources, and we have 1440. Would that be found online, or is that a
Yeah, yeah,
okay? And then Tangle, and then Ground News, and then CBS Sunday. So those would be classic, trustable options for anyone who is looking for news station they can trust.
Yeah, and
So,
CBS Sunday Morning's a little bit more, I don't know, what do they call lifestyle or whatever. It's not just hardcore news, but they have, interesting, stories about, community and what's going, what are some people doing, and some of those more uplifting stories. So it's not just, I wouldn't call
yeah,
it
yeah,
straight
yeah,
up
yeah.
news. Yeah.
Right. All right. So, then, I that it, we have scanned through all of my notes. I have no more input really to say unless you do.
No, I mean, I think that a lot of it is just reiterating, like sometimes people talk about, doing some of these things like trying to find better news sources and all that. That's kind of your civic duty. And that's sort of true. But also, I would say you can also do it for selfish reasons. Like, do you really want to be mad all the time? Maybe, are you really
Yeah,
happy being
think
mad all the
about
time?
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's sort of an addiction, you would say, I would
It
say.
is, yeah, yeah, it
Yeah.
100% is. It's a tribal part of our brain that kind of takes over, and we don't even really know what's happening. So being more active. I don't know, what do people say, the whole touch grass thing. So sometimes it comes back to some of these things that sound kind of trite, but get outside, see the sunshine. Like you say, talk to your neighbors. Those kind of things can help.
Yeah, that is a really beautiful and insightful way to explain that. Just take a break from media in general, social media, the TV, the news, and just try to enjoy life while you have it. And so, well, thank you, David Beckemeyer. Okay, your website will be in the link for everyone who wants to learn more about different ways to navigate and depolarize in this age of outrage in media in the US. And anything else before we finish? Any little tidbits you wanted to get in there?
No, I really appreciate speaking with you, and I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. It has been great having you too. So, everyone, this has been David Beckemeyer. Thank you, David, and thank you for listening to this podcast, the Worldview from an Out for You podcast. And I will see you later. So thank you for listening. The website for the Outrage podcast called Outrage Overload Podcast is in the link from in the, I don't know, show notes of this podcast. It will be in the description. So thank you, and thank you so much for your beautiful, warm, caring, friendly insight, and peace to the nation. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
You as well.
Okay, thank you. Bye.